Communities around the country have been protesting against increasing incidents of abuse against women and children. This follows the alleged rape of a 7-year-old child at a school in Matatiele in the Eastern Cape last October, which has sparked a shutdown. Similar incidents have also been reported in the Northwest and in Mpumalanga, where 2 6-year-old children were also reportedly raped. Let's bring in Megan Briede, who's the Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa. Megan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. It's incredibly worrying, isn't it? I mean, one incident is one too many, but there are so many incidents in the headlines at the moment involving the rape of children.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as Save the Children South Africa, we're gravely concerned about the continued reporting and rise of particularly sexual abuse of children in our country.
I mean, you know, the one issue that has come up is the question of whether schools are following the correct program of action when it comes to light that a child has been put in danger in this way. Do you reckon that our schools know? I mean, Luke Lamprecht has spoken of the kinds of forms, Form 22, that needs to be filled in to report suspected child abuse or neglect to the relevant authorities, and that being the first step that schools need to take. Do our principals and our SGBs know about this?
I'm actually not sure if the broader community, including the schools, actually understand that within the Children's Act, under Section 110(1), it clearly states certain people that have to, in fact, it uses the word must, report any suspicions of child abuse. Right. And that includes teachers. It includes traditional leaders. It includes religious leaders, social workers, psychologists, medical professionals. And what we're tending to find is abuse happens, and as professionals, instead of complying with the law, we try and resolve it within the context of that school or that environment. And that is in direct contravention to our legislation in this country.
And we see that in families as well, don't we? We see from reports by police that cases are registered, let's say over the weekend. Come Monday, those cases are withdrawn because the family decides to, as you say, deal with it themselves.
Absolutely, and as long as we try and deal with these cases themselves, very often the perpetrators, re-perpetrate. They continue this behavior because they never really held to account by the law. And families are hiding their abuse and trying to resolve the matter in-house. Again, that is also not helping the child who's been through the abuse because it's shrouded in secrecy. So how do you process the trauma that child has been through?
Yeah, it's shrouded in secrecy. There's so much shame around something that has happened to this child that is no fault of the child. How do they recover from something like this, Megan?
Well, definitely. I mean, you can recover, children can recover, but they need the support. They need parents who are not hiding it, that are acknowledging that what has happened is not their fault, and that are actively showing their commitment to protecting their child. And not just parents, but communities, all of us need to make sure that children can feel safe enough to express and talk about the experience they've been through and not live with that guilt, because that's actually what perpetrators of sexual abuse want. They make the child feel that they are to blame, that if they talk, they will be punished, the child will be punished. And that's the cycles we need to break. Yeah. We need our children to understand that it's the perpetrator who needs to be punished, and that is wrong.
I want to just go back to the issue of schools, just because the stories that we're covering in the news at the moment, many of them have happened on school premises. The schools are meant to, as we know, run background checks, to put it bluntly, on anyone who is going to be working in close proximity to a child, right? Do you know whether that is happening, at least to the extent where it should be happening?
I don't think it's happening to the extent it should. I think that, a lot of schools are not aware of it or assign a high cost to being able to do these background checks, not really realizing that part of being employed, it is on your responsibility as the not just the employer but the employee to make sure that you are screened against the Sexual Offences Register as well as Part B of the register under the Children's Act. So I don't think that is happening sufficiently, and we actually need to put checks and balances in place where Department of Education checks with the school to ensure that those checks and balances are in place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a grave injustice to these children when schools try to deal with these kinds of issues internally. And often these procedural issues, whether it's an HR issue or a discussion that takes place one-on-one with the alleged perpetrator, it sees this alleged perpetrator, which we've seen many, many times in cases in South Africa's history. Luke Lamprecht again talks about the Ian Ware's case, a former teacher at prestigious schools that moved from one school to the next. He's been accused of child sexual abuse dating back to the 1960s. We've come a long way since 1960s in some ways, but in many ways we have not.
Absolutely. And I think what happens is schools are trying to protect their reputation. They're fearful that if it comes out that there was an abuse case on their premises, this will negatively reflect their ability to teach or continue to get pupils. But the bigger challenge is when you've hidden it, I think that's more of a reputational damage. And we need people to understand that. When we see schools stepping up and taking responsibility and facing issues such as sexual abuse head on, I think that shows much more, strength within that school and within that leadership.
Yeah.
So it gives you more confidence in a way.
Or else you are actively encouraging these perpetrators to reoffend.
Absolutely, and we have a lot of it. So many girls who are not reporting and young men who are not reporting, where we have repeat offenders, like Luke was pointing out, again and again and again. And us, as the adults, are not stopping the cycle. We are buying into what the perpetrator is saying to the child. We're buying in and supporting that secrecy, which is not okay.
Yeah, we've spoken about Luke Lamprecht a number of times now, and I'm looking at an article where he spoke to the Daily Maverick. Luke Lamprecht is the head of advocacy at Women and Men Against Child Abuse. But just as a parting shot this afternoon, Megan, what do caregivers need to know about to be aware of, whether it's a change in a child's behavior, whether the child becomes quiet? Do we need to keep the lines of communication open around every and any topic? The child should, feel free to come to their caregivers with absolutely everything. How do we as parents and caregivers play a part in stopping these kinds of devastating things from happening to our children, or at least giving them the opportunity and the freedom and being free of shame to come to us and to talk to us?
I think the most important thing is, as parents, very often we only speak to our children when a problem has arisen. And what we need to do is to weave into all our discussions with our children information or approaches that can protect them. So, for example, in a general conversation with a child, speaking to your child about, I want to hear your voice, I want to hear your opinions. I do believe when there's cases of child abuse that it's the adult's fault and not the child's fault. So just general discussions with our children lay a platform where that child can feel, if something has happened to me, I can talk to my parent. There's not going to be judgment. My parents already said to me that a child cannot be blamed when they are raped. That it actually has to be the adult that carries the burden and the responsibility. So as parents, these are not easy topics, but it is our responsibility to open that field for our children.
Not easy, but essential conversations to be having with our children. Megan Briede, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Megan is the Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa.